Greetings and welcome to today's educational program. How Westinghouse Electric's Global Operations Support Group began their strategic development and deployment journey by Erik Zink. This is your moderator, Shobha Middle with ASQ Quality Management Division. Today we have the distinct pleasure of hearing from Erik Zink. Please join me in welcoming him. With over 30 years experience, Erik's focus has been on execution of business and operating system transformations. Using his deep expertise in process and operational improvement techniques, Erik has led several large-scale transformations across a broad range of industries. Erik has an innate ability to translate customer experience from the voice of customer into customer value creation delivery. This allows Erik to operationalize systems level improvements for his clients and business partners and achieve their goal of maximizing customer satisfaction. Erik is the principal for Think Zink Consulting LLC. He received his Master's of Science in Industrial Engineering from Eastern Michigan University and earned his bachelor's in manufacturing from Kanri University. He also holds a degree in chemistry from Westinghouse Community College. He earned his Six Sigma Black Belt certification from Ford Motors Company in 2006. Notable clients include Ford Motor Company, Visteon Corporation, Eaton Corporation, Kraft Foods, Caterpillar, Meritor, Truck Hero, New Gold, Canadian Natural Resources, Vroom, Dextech Fastening Systems, Mutual of Omaha, Danfoss, Westinghouse Electric, Meritor, Orion Foods, Bob Evans Foods, Michael Foods, Truck Hero, Wayne State Medical School, and Reese Foods. And so without further ado, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce Erik Zink to you. Erik, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Shobha. Appreciate it. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon or good evening, depending, or it could be good morning, depending on where you're from, as I think we have somebody from Hong Kong. So my name's Erik Zink. I appreciate everyone joining me on this somber day of September 11th, a very somber moment for our country's history. Today, we're going to talk about how Westinghouse Electric Company's Global Operations Support Group has begun their strategic development and deployment journey. So, Shobha, thank you so much for the information and introduction. Obviously, a lot more in the introduction here, but one of the things I did want to highlight with my background is the business transformation experience. Large-scale business transformations require some strategic development and deployment, especially as it relates to innovation or changing the way cultures operate within organizations, especially large ones. And so, change management and strategic development and deployment are key aspects of any business transformation. The introduction to strategic process development and deployment, it's a large topic. Obviously, we have under an hour tonight to spend on it. There's no way I can do it justice. You could probably have a thesis on this or take some curriculum and several classes on this topic alone. But it is a key aspect to any business transformation. I mean, if we think about companies that have succeeded in their space, Amazon, Netflix, right, that have been able to strategically deploy very well their mission, right, and to be able to pivot and change their mission versus other companies, right, like Xerox or BlackBerry, right, who used to have the market on cell phones, Polaroid, Kodak, right, again, other companies that either pivoted too late or didn't take advantage of the digital times and be able to change the mission that they were trying to achieve. With strategic planning and development, there's no perfect way to do it. Achieving perfection is like anything else. It's a journey on continuous improvement. And I would say, from my experience, to not let perfection stop progress. Another aspect of strategic planning is don't think that this has to be done at the CEO, C-suite level. Certainly, it helps to have strategic planning done at the very highest levels of the organization and to cascade down through the organization. But that doesn't mean that it has to begin that way. And in fact, in our case study today, you'll see that we're actually starting our deployment in the middle of the organization. So that yeah, again, having that structure of strategic planning and development and deployment at any layer of the organization, I think is essential to really define and navigate through what it is you're trying to do, whether it's a business transformation or whether it's just day-to-day operations within a business. So today's learning objectives, if you take a look at the right-hand side, we've got the 5 stages of strategic planning, development, and deployment, right? In typical scenarios, you've got some type of business environmental analysis, right? What we would call scanning, right? Where we're going out and we're doing research, we're investigating, we're trying to understand the markets, we're trying to understand, maybe some DEI or ESG initiatives, legal regulatory requirements, whatever drives that business, trying to get those inputs so we understand not only the position we have in the market, but also what else is out in the market that we either need to watch for or take advantage of. And then from that, we go back and culminate our vision, mission, and values, right? And understand, are we on target? Do we need to veer, redirect, pivot altogether? And then the third step in that is then creating those strategic business objectives that will help to propagate the mission and the vision and the values. And once you have those objectives, the next thing is to communicate those, right? We have to make sure people are on board. We have to take care of change management. We have to ensure that they're implemented and aligned with those in the organization further down to ensure that, as it were, everyone is rowing the same direction, down the stream. And then, of course, there's the performance evaluation and feedback, right? Just as quality professionals, I'm sure we're all familiar with the PDCA cycle, and it's no different here. We want to make sure that we're adjusting and we're checking to make sure that we're on track. So if we look at the learning objectives, right, the 5 stages, we'll quickly go through those. We'll talk about executing some tools. Every good quality person has a toolbox, and we're no different with strategic deployment. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the tools and techniques that we can use, leveraging the power of KPIs, right? Key process indicators, which are key to ensure that we're on track with deploying the strategy. And then, of course, we'll provide some examples of what we're doing at Westinghouse Electric to work through this process. So from the key components of a strategic plan, how things connect are important, right? You can't have an organization where one part of the organization is working on one type of a vision and then the other part of the organization is working on a different part of the vision. Everybody has to be connected, and really the key there is deciding, what kind of company do you want to be? Who do you want to be when you grow up, right? And that's really the long-term aspiration and vision that whoever is leading the strategic development needs to create, right? Because that really drives the strategy, and the mission to that is the how, right? It's how are we going to do that? What do we need to do to ensure that we are deploying the mission as it's developed? And so to think about that, you've got to think about core values, right? Because it depends on the size of the organization, the age of the organization. So, for example, Westinghouse Electric is a very, very old company, relatively speaking, at least for the United States. And given that it's over 100 years old, it's gone through quite a bit of trials and tribulations in and of itself. I mean, it was quite a juggernaut of an organization back in the day. But in today's environment, it's mostly focusing on nuclear fuels. And so, the core values in Westinghouse Electric today are really instilled in the nuclear safety culture that is propagated by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and the public utilities that deal in nuclear electric generation. So Core values is something that we can't negate or forget as we develop the strategy. And likewise, the goals and objectives. So, what are those specific measurable targets? We'll see later on in the case study that we use several key tools to drive goals and objectives with our strategy within Westinghouse Electric's process. And so the strategic initiatives that we have put in place, we've used what many term as an X matrix from the Hoshin style planning of strategy development and deployment. We'll provide an example of that, even though it's a bit of an eye chart, but it's really what ties everything all together, as you'll see momentarily. So with those key resource components of the strategic plan, one of the things that I'd like to focus on a bit is the team. Being able to assemble a team of educated, experienced, and resourceful individuals is key to any strategic development and deployment process. We'll have a couple of slides in a moment that kind of give some thoughts further on that, but want to point out that it's very important that we have the right team that's assembled to put the strategy together. Financial projections are important, and risk is certainly something that needs to be considered as well. With our strategy deployment that we did at the cost level within Westinghouse, one of the risks that we learned as we went through the process was that of alignment with other functions in the organization. We did the strategy development within the quality function of global operations support, and after we had developed our strategy, there were some alignment issues with the manufacturing teams and how they were going about their strategy deployment process. So again, going back to feedback and in the check process, right? There are some things that we'll learn for round 2 when we go back through strategy development later this year. And then the organizational plan, details of who should be a part of that structure, what are the roles and responsibilities of the team that's creating the strategy, and are they representative of the key people that would be involved with developing and deploying that strategy. In Westinghouse itself, we're still in a little bit of an organizational flux, so this has been a challenge for us. As global operations support was carved out as a separate business unit from Westinghouse Electric, we continued to struggle with the appropriate roles and structures within that organization to help fit the needs of the existing and the new processes that were created from the business realignment. If we talk for a minute about performance monitoring and evaluation, I mentioned earlier about the KPIs and the tools that we had or that we have here at Westinghouse. We're using scorecards, we're using pulling charts. Those might be typical tools that you've heard in the past for how to monitor and measure goals and objectives. We'll have examples of that in a moment that I can share with you. But it's meant as a means to ensure that we're on track and to adjust if we're not as we go through the reviews. And then some of the other elements, if we go through down the list here of these are the tools that I would commonly see as a part of a strategy development process. Most people are familiar with the SWOT analysis, right? The strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. We've created in the quality function something that we call a QSAT, which is a quality site assessment tool. And basically, what we're doing with that is we're using that QSAT, which I'll explain in a bit, as a method to do our SWOT analysis of each manufacturing site, right? So we can go in and assess strengths and weaknesses within each one of our manufacturing operations. The PESTEL analysis is another tool. When we did our 3-day strategy offsite, that was used to try to understand, where things were in the environment for where Westinghouse operates. We were impacted, for example, if you take the P for political, One of the things that we took advantage of, but were also impacted by, was the Russian incursion into Ukraine. As the Russian invasion occurred, the nuclear fuel supply for Ukraine's nuclear reactors became at risk. Obviously, Ukraine no longer wanted to purchase from Russian suppliers their nuclear fuel operations. So they looked to partner with another organization and settled to partner with Westinghouse to provide their nuclear fuel. But the issue with that is that the Russian designed nuclear reactors in Ukraine are different from anything that we and Westinghouse have supplied in the past. So from a strategy perspective, it was decided that we would pursue that business to try to be not only a good global partner, but also to help with the advancement of the nuclear industry in Ukraine. But that's caused a lot of hardship in Westinghouse as well, as we had to accelerate and reverse engineer the fuel assemblies that were currently being provided by the Russians to the Ukrainians for the nuclear fuel. So things of that nature, right? The economic aspect of the pestle analysis. If you look at and think about the nuclear resurgence that's happening, we're in certain areas of the world, we're going through kind of a nuclear renaissance, right? As organizations and governments are looking to green energy to be supplied, in vast amounts. And even though we're building the scale in wind and solar, they can't produce to the scale that nuclear energy can produce, right? So I know in Michigan, for example, we've got the Palisades nuclear facility that both the state as well as federal governments are providing significant grants to these public utilities to decommission or to recommission the Palisades nuclear facility, right? So things, nuclear facilities that once had been decommissioned and were no longer in use are being reassessed and taken advantage of, and that creates a market opportunity, obviously, for us at Westinghouse. The social programs, right? The ESG, right? The both from the social as well as the environmental aspects of all of the new ESG programs and what green energy like nuclear can do, or even technology. If we take a look at the nuclear technology today compared to back in the 70s, I mean, we're now able to develop microreactors that don't have to be in large utility nuclear core reactors. We can build nuclear reactors now that can fit in much smaller spaces, similar to what we've got, within nuclear submarines, right? But now we've got the opportunity to put, nuclear reactors in information centers and hospitals and other areas that need a lot of energy, but yet, the space might be something that has to be taken into consideration. Obviously, from a legal standpoint, nuclear is a very highly regulated and industry, both from a government aspect as well as from a utilities aspect, and it has to be looked at as part of our strategy, as well as from the environmental aspect of it, right? Both as a green energy, but also as the nuclear waste, right? That nobody wants in their backyard. So these are things that we had to take account, as we went through and did our strategy development. But again, all of these tools, the team is responsible for bringing into that strategy development process. And so the more knowledgeable, the more diversified teams that you can provide to do that with, the better off an organization will be with being able to develop an accurate strategy that should meet its mission and vision. If we look at all that tool set, right, and again, we kind of went through the pestle analysis a little bit and SWOT analysis, but the key here is to take external information, right, that's happening in parts of the world where the relationship and the impact to those areas has a direct impact to the organization you're creating the strategy for, as well as to look internally, right? As what are your strengths and weaknesses? What are you, where are you benchmarking, whether internally or within industry? You've got the Porter's Five Forces tool, which again is another tool that can internal tool that can be used to develop your strategy. But the key thing here is to understand both from an external as well as an internal application, what these tools can bring to the table as you do your research and try to understand, especially if you're doing strategy for the first time, what could impact that strategy forward. So if we talk a little bit and focus a little bit on the strategic planning process itself, the key highlight here is that, like anything else, developing a strategy is a series of processes, right? And the key point is that whether the processes are good processes or bad processes, the outcome is still some type of strategic plan. And the point here is that regardless of whether it's your first time or you've done iterative cycles of strategic planning, the plan itself is the output document. That's the key information that you result with when you're done with those processes. And it's that plan that then carries through from the development over to the deployment stage, right? It doesn't do a company any good to have the best laid plan if they can't deploy it. And so once a strategic plan has been put in place, it's time to create some actions and some timelines to address that plan. And it's probably very likely that plan will change. You can either have iterative planning cycles, or you're going to have to adjust as things happen down the road. Again, we can't let perfection paralyze progress, right? So sometimes you'll find that the strategic planning process wasn't the best process that you could have done. That's okay. It might be something that you take as a learning lessons learned and you use as an improvement cycle. But what the typical planning process would look like is, and again, carried out in weeks. Now this can change by organization and certainly by size. Again, we were afforded 3 days for our offsite instead of several weeks. So that more to come with that, obviously. But in a typical process, this is what you see, with the first week assembling your team, and then once you've got the team assembled and are able to kick off, then you're really conducting that analysis, right? So once you've done the data gathering, you've used the external tools and the internal tools to try to gather all of that information. The next couple of weeks, you're going through and you're trying to understand the sense of it all, right? What synthesize the findings of what that data means, and what not only what does it mean, but how does can your company take advantage of it, or how can they harbor and shelter themselves from it, depending on what type of information it is. And then, of course, once you've got that synthesis in place, defining your vision, mission, and values, or redefining them, if you have things that exist, right, to ensure that you're still on track and on target to meet your strategy. Probably a lot of people are very familiar with the forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning process. So I don't think this is probably any type of a new statement for anybody here, but again, just to reiterate the importance of getting the right people in the room and making sure that those people are aligned and they're on board. It may require some offsites to the offsite, right? Or it might require the first day or two where you have to get the team together and get the team to gel. It depends on the organization. It depends on the remoteness of the team that you're trying to pull together. If it's a global team that doesn't interact very often, it could take some time, right? You try to go through all the social norms. If it's a team, a C-suite team of individuals who come into the office every day and are seeing meetings every day with each other, it might go a little more quickly. But I cannot stress enough that how important this part is to ensure that you've got a well-working team in place before you do the strategy. Because if you don't, then your strategy development is going to be very combative and argumentative, and probably not succeed very well. Certainly will be a long slog at the very least. So, and to that end, I ran across a great book when I was doing a former project for another client. And I would highly recommend the Five Dysfunctions of a Team. It's a really short read. I might even have like just 50 pages. It's very quick. Can read in a couple hours. But the thing I like about this book, especially in this space, is it talks about a CEO, right? A new CEO that's coming in to take over a company that's a troubled company, right? With a troubled executive team, and she kind of has to navigate through and get the team on board, right? Try to remove the absence of trust and the fear of conflict, right? And you know, you can't have if you use a sports analogy, right? You could pick the sport, but you know, the great teams of any sport, each player has a position, right? Just like in business, each person has a title, a function. And the thing with this book is it kind of goes through the various levels of this pyramid, right? And it talks about, you know, getting people to trust one another, because without trust, you really can't form any type of higher function within a team, right? And then you know, once people start having empathy and sympathy for one another, you know, talking through the fear of conflict, right? I'm sure we've all known people who just won't speak up, right? They're very introverted, they're shy. You know, they have problems with creating boundaries, right? They have problems with saying no. And again, you know, your strategy is that important to where you have to ensure that people are willing to stand up for themselves, their functions, their organizations, and speak their mind and put their experience on the table to be able to stand up and stand for whatever they feel and think is the best option, not only for them, but for the organization, right? And sometimes you have to take the hit for the greater good, and sometimes you have to defend it yourself for the greater good. And then, you know, going up through into the ranks of the pyramid, the lack of commitment. You know, taking a look at, you know, are people truly committed? Is this, you know, would you stay, you know, the long hours, right, to make sure that this gets done? Are you in it to win it, right? And the avoidance of accountability, right? Would you die on the sword so that, you know, you achieve what you set out to achieve? And then, of course, the final, you know, tier of the pyramid, the intention to be. But she walks through all of this, and some of the scenarios that the CEO you know, does with the team, the role plays, and some of the other things that she does to get these teams up through these tiers. It's a pretty good read. So I would highly recommend it if you're put in a situation where you've got to lead any team, but certainly a team that's as important as one that's trying to create strategy for an organization. So continuing down the strategic planning path, so, you know, with week 6, we would be, you know, after setting the goals and the objectives, we set the goals, right? We talk about, you know, what are those clear, measurable goals. I'm sure everybody's heard the term SMART before, right? SMART goals, you know, specific, measurable, attainable, you know, those that acronym. So it really goes no different here. You want to make sure that you're setting, you know, the strategic goals, both short and long term, as to what you try to attain with the strategy, and then you know, creating the ideas for the strategic initiatives, right? So once you have a goal, then how are you going to achieve it, right? What is that initiative that you're going to take to get from X to Y, so that you can make that happen? The following weeks are really talking about assessing and prioritizing each of the initiatives. I know in our strategy, the first go around, we had initiative overkill, and we over initiative ourselves. which became an issue because then nothing got done, right? So we had to kind of go back and reprioritize. And then finally, developing the action plans and the milestones and the deadlines. And that's the bowling charts, the scorecards, the action plans that drive all of that to ensure that you're coming to completion with your strategy deployment. And then can't state enough, the allocation of resources and the budget to ensure that, one, you have the resources, and two, that they're allowed to work on the things that strategy indicates is important. If you don't have people to work on it, then it's not going to get done, right? And that's one of the key things we had to set up an RX matrix, was who's going to be responsible for what. Building that implementation roadmap is what we did by using the matrix. It kind of helped us to navigate a roadmap of, how do we take the strategic initiatives and put them into further down into the organization with how much are we going to do, who's going to do it, when are they going to do it by, and then finally the approval and sign off for that, right? So, we talk about there's a term in strategic deployment called catchball, right? Where basically one team that develops a strategy and develops the deployment initiatives and implementation roadmap for that, then goes down into the organization to communicate that, right? And what one person's initiative might become, two or three initiatives for another person down lower in the organization. So that catchball process occurs as a part of a communications plan to state, this is what we're expecting, for you to do as far as strategy deployment in order to achieve the mission and the vision of the greater good, the greater organization. But there might be some roadblocks, right? Or going back to resources or budgets, right? It might be like, well, we don't have a budget for them. We don't have the current resources for that. So are we shifting resources? Are we shifting, adding to or adjusting the budgets accordingly? And these are conversations that go on, interlevel until things are settled and agreed upon and prioritized appropriately. Again, catchball is in kind of game like a hot potato, right? It's like, okay, I got it. I'm going to pass it off to you, and then you have it. Then you pass it back to me, and so that's kind of how the term came to be. So if we talk about the transformation strategy here at Westinghouse Electric, I had mentioned that Westinghouse Electric is now focused on nuclear fuels. Even though they've had a very storied history, the last several years have been very rough for Westinghouse Electric. They've gone through owners, 5 different owners in the last decade. The owners, when they were owned by Toshiba, back in the 20-teens, Toshiba took them to bankruptcy, and they had to go through bankruptcy, which really caused a cultural dormancy, if you will, within the organization, as you can imagine. Several years of cost downs, no training, no hiring, no travel, no investment in capital. And so it really was a dark time for Westinghouse Electric. And as Westinghouse reemerged out of bankruptcy and have since been owned by private equity, finding the right private equity owner has been challenging. But we think we're in a good place now with Brookfield Energy, who's a private equity partner that has really a long-term vision for energy, both green energy as well as traditional energy, but has a long vision for nuclear in its portfolio and is willing to reinvest and grow the business once again. And so as the company has emerged from bankruptcy and has started to grow, one of the things that the reorganization of the company that occurred was that the Global Operations Support Group was created. And the Global Operations Support Group is the manufacturing arm of Westinghouse. So the manufacturing sites and all of the ancillary support services like quality that belong in manufacturing are now organized in a sole entity, separate from the business units and separate from the engineering centers that produce and design the products that we build. And so, as a means to protect manufacturing quality, a quality organization was generated for global operations support that has the vision and purpose of helping to support the manufacturing quality organization, as well as to ensure that as the company grows and as the company reorganizes, that we protect the integrity of quality of products that are produced at Westinghouse and ensure that the name brand is still kept in high regard. And so we're on a journey for a 3-year quality transformation. And we hope that through that journey, we're able to achieve some key initiatives. So I had discussed earlier about an executive summary and a vision and mission. This is ours for the transformation. So as you can see on the far left, we've got the Westinghouse 2024 goals. And the GOS imperatives is what we really drive as our mission for how we would go about the focus areas we would go about to achieving those Westinghouse goals. And then we've taken it a step further from the global operations support initiatives to the quality focus areas. So if we look at the quality organization, these are the 6 key work streams and focus areas that really provide the strategic initiatives, if you will, for our transformation priorities and our strategy over the next 3 years. And so, if we take a look at the 3-year transformation priorities, and then we move those into our 2024 annual objectives. So what we try to do here is kind of provide a flow of, how do we, as the quality organization within global operations support, impact the greater organization as it relates to the goals that have been set up by the WEC staff, the executive team within Westinghouse. And so I had mentioned earlier the X matrix. I apologize for the eye chart, but it's not so much important that you be able to read the text as it is to kind of get a sense for the format of the document itself. So in the dark blue in the center, you can see where there's an X. That's pretty much how the X occurs and why it's named the X matrix. But just to walk everybody through this a little bit, if you take a look at that dark blue center, what you'll see, if you look at the south quadrant of that, you'll see where it has the key strategic initiatives for our GOS quality program, right? And so if you start from the south and you go counterclockwise around the X, what you'll notice is that then to the west or the left of that X, you'll see the various tier level initiatives or improvement priorities for each one of those objectives that we had in the south quadrant. What you'll notice in the very southeast grid between the west and the southwest grid between the west and the south quadrants, you'll see some circles or dots. Some of them look like they're filled in, some look like they're open. And there is a key on the far right if you can read it, but it's just a kind of a direct and indirect correlation between which priorities impact which objectives the most. And then the same holds true for the northwest quadrant where you see the similar circles. But on the north, the quadrant, right, the top, you'll see here, this is the second level improvement priorities that we put in place. So as I had mentioned, we've got the global operations support division within Westinghouse, and the second level to that would be the manufacturing sites or the functional leaders within global operations support, such as quality, environmental health and safety, supply chain. So what you'll see here is that there's a shifting of you go from the objectives in the South to the priorities in the West, and now you've got these second level improvement priorities in the North. And this is what I talked about earlier, where we kind of over-initiated ourselves. You can see where we started with the black initiatives, and then we added on to the red initiatives, which you know, caused a lot of prioritization issues, if you will. But it shows an example of where you've got your higher level initiatives, and then those are cascaded down one step lower into the organization, and that's where that catch ball starts coming into impact between one level of an organization and the other, right, on how those improvement priorities should be addressing and matching the second tier improvement priorities. And there should be, if you look to the northwest quadrant where the dots are, the more dots that you have that are filled in, show a direct correlation, right? So again, in theory, you'd want your subordinates working on something that directly supports an objective that you have or that you've been given by your boss, right? And then to the top right, or the northeast quadrant is again more direct correlation as it relates to the things in the east quadrant or the ones to the right, right? And those are the targets. So all of these initiatives again have a KPI. They have a target, they have a goal, they have a metric that we're going to manage to and measure to ensure success. And just like every other initiative, the metrics have a direct or an indirect correlation, right? You might have a metric like customer satisfaction, which is hard to measure a direct imperative or initiative to, but that initiative might still impact customer satisfaction, right? So it may have an indirect correlation. And then to the far right, what you'll see are individuals who are responsible for enacting some of these key priorities. And again, work in progress here, but here's some key initiatives that are key personnel who are responsible for some of the improvement initiatives. The next slide here is an example of a communication plan that we had put out, with the 6 work streams on the left, where we felt we were, from a transformation framework, whether we were at a crawl, walk, or run status, where we planned to be in our development and deployment of that work stream within 2024. Where we wanted to be at the end of 24, and then again, being a 3-year strategy, where do we want to try to end up at the end of year 3 for 2025? With the communication plan, we've put together some 3-year transformation horizon statements that we share with the organization from time to time that talks about where we were at the point of departure versus where do we want to be at the point of arrival. I had mentioned earlier the QSAT tool, this quality site or self-assessment tool that we use is helping to drive the opportunities within our manufacturing sites. And we're really using this as part of our key SWOT analysis for each site to site. But the verbiage on the slide itself talks about, where are we, in the beginning of the transformation, for example, there's, no ability to really understand the current risks in the organization or what the gaps are within the organization. And, this tool has helped us to level set. As you can see on the left, the various grading scales from site to site, and the multi-bar is a great example of where we've gone back and reassessed a site or had them self-assess versus assessing on our own. The same thing with our scorecard. So you'll see at the left here, we're managing to a scorecard. We call it our quality operating system scorecard. And you know, it's a means that we're using currently manually in Excel, but on the bottom left you see as we're starting to create an automated scorecard using our automation tools to help alleviate some of the burdensomeness of filling out the scorecard and focusing more on the metrics and the reporting of those metrics. But again, a 3-year horizon here on where we were with no transparency to the metrics and goals and more sharing of practices to where we want to be by the end of 25. Fully automated scorecard in place and reporting mechanisms that allow us to drill down into the metrics that are unfavorable. And then we also have a weekly action plan that we keep track on all the key work streams. And this is an example of one where you can see we've got our key metrics. We've got accomplishments or upcoming activities. You know, what risks do we have to look out for? You know, where are the reportable milestones and some key metrics or action plans or project plans to the right that we track progress on, make sure we're keeping track. And then our quality operating system key process indicator scorecard. This is that manual Excel spreadsheet that I was referring to that's filled out by each site once a month, where we meet in our quality operating system and we discuss, you know, any metrics that are unfavorable to goals and targets and what the actions are in place to address that, or what we need to do to address that, and what kind of support a site might need to help get their monthly performance back on track. And then a bowling chart where we're trying to put together our strategic imperative goals and objectives for 2024. As you can see, like I said, we're not perfect. We've still got some metrics we're trying to figure out how to measure. But again, it gives us a monthly snapshot of whether we're ready to goal, and if so, what we need to do about it to ensure that we're course correcting and taking the appropriate actions. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions that we might have.
Thank you so much, Erik. And I will stop recording and then we'll go on the questions.